Welcome to the Midnight News broadcasting to you live from Algiers. Here are your tonight's stories. On the National Day of Memory, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune emphasizes the nation's commitment to addressing memory issues fairly rooted in the people's sacrifices to thwart ambitions. Next, Gaza endures 6 massacres with 54 martyrs and 96 injured as the death toll surges to over 34,000 since October 7, while 21 others, including children, were killed in Rafah bombings. And Hamas's official spokesperson Osama Hamdan warns that there will be no ceasefire deal if the Zionist aggression persists in Rafah. Welcome again to the program. At the outset, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, addressed a message on Tuesday on the occasion of Memory Day, which coincides with May 8, in which he stressed that the issue of memory will continue to be at the center of his concerns until it is addressed in a substantive, bold, and fair way.
The issue of memory is inalienable and imprescriptible and cannot be subject to concession or bargaining. It will remain a top concern until it is dealt with objectively and boldly in a way that does justice to the historical truth.
In his message, the President affirmed that the issue of memory is inalienable and imprescriptible. It cannot be the subject of concessions or bargaining, emphasizing that credibility and seriousness are a fundamental requirement to successfully carry out the measures and efforts inherent to this sensitive and delicate issue and what it represents for the Algerian people, proud of their long national militant history and their bitter armed struggle, and faithful to the martyrs and the message of November. Of the Republic also stressed that the state's interest in the issue of memory is based on the appreciation of the national responsibility to preserve the glorious legacy of generations and stems from the nation's pride in its honorable history and also from the immense sacrifices made by the people throughout the history of Algeria.
In our focus on the future, in a climate of trust, I consider that credibility and seriousness are basic prerequisites to complete the measures and steps relating to this sensitive and delicate issue, considering its importance to the Algerian people, who are proud of their decade-long national activism and armed struggle, and who are faithful to the martyrs and the message of November. The state's interest in the issue of memory is based on the national responsibility in preserving the glorious legacy of many generations and stems from the nation's pride of its honorable history and also from the Algerian people's huge sacrifices throughout the country's ancient and modern history. To ward off greed and block the way for enemies who have always tried to undermine our unity and strength, and their progeny continues to this day to target our country.
The Speaker of the Council of the Nation, Salah Goudjil, said that on May 8, 1945, Algeria experienced genocide at the hands of French colonialism, just as it is happening now in Gaza. During a speech he gave at the Algiers Mosque on the occasion of the National Memory Day, which coincides with May 8, Goudjil said that the massacres committed by France against the Algerians on May 8, 1945 are considered a basic starting point for defending the Palestinian cause, demanding a free and independent Palestinian state.
الشعوب في العالم في نهار 8 ماي كلها مظاهرات تاع فرحة وتاع انتصار
All the people of the world took to the streets on May 8 to celebrate joy and victory. But the Algerians, who also tried to express their opinion on their self-determination, were faced with a massacre in Stif, Galma, and Kharrata. In a few days, there were 45,000 martyrs. At that time, there was no television nor media. When we compare it with what is happening today in Gaza, for almost 7 months, we see that Algeria experienced the same genocidal war at the hands of the French colonialism. That is why when Algeria defends Palestine, the self-determination of the Palestinian people and the freedom of Palestine, it does so on the basis of its experience. It is something that we have already experienced.
ننطلق من هذه التجربة تاع الجزائر. هذا شيء عشناه احنا.
In a related context, Salah Boujil said that the Moroccan occupation that the Sahrawi people are subjected to is the same that the French colonialism the Algerians suffered from, adding that Algeria differentiates between the Moroccan people and the Makhzen regime, which represents a colonial power.
نتمنوا للجزائر نجاحات أخرى.
We hope that Algeria makes more success and strengthens its position in the international arena in order to defend the oppressed, defend the freedom of peoples such as Palestine and Western Sahara. Moroccan occupation is like French occupation, and we distinguish between the Moroccan people and the Makhzen, which is the occupation. Today, when I see their statements on Western Sahara, they are identical to the statement of colonial France. The same language, the same style. It's about a people asking for independence, for self-determination. Let them decide on their fate. If they want to stick with Morocco, so be it. But if they want independence, then why preventing them from it? This land is not Moroccan, as stated by the Hague Court in 1975.
مش الجزائر اللي تقولها. لا كورد لا هاي قالتها في 75.
Stay here for news about the Palestinian file after this break. The Palestinian Health Ministry in Gaza said the occupation committed 6 massacres, leaving 54 martyrs and 96 injured in the last 24 hours. The Ministry of Health in Gaza also announced on Tuesday that the death toll from the ongoing Zionist aggression had risen to 34,789 martyrs and 78,204 injuries since last October 7. And 21 Palestinians, including children and women, were martyred since Tuesday dawn as the occupation bombed various areas in the Gaza Strip, the majority of them from the city of Rafah. Medical sources in Gaza said that 20 martyrs and dozens of injuries arrived at Kuwait's specialized hospital in Rafah. The Rafah governorate witnesses intense artillery shelling and airstrikes resulted in numerous casualties among the displaced Palestinians who sought refuge there from various parts of the Gaza Strip. Hassan Barkan provides you with more details.
Amidst the chaos, working Palestinians find sanctuary. From one tragedy to another, they navigate a perilous existence. Rafah governorate, their last bastion and connection to the outside world, now gasp for air as it becomes the stage for Zionist atrocities of genocide, displacement, and devastation Countless family stories are etched in blood on its streets.
We were optimistic when Hamas agreed to the ceasefire proposal. We were very optimistic. But Israel procrastinated, and it is going too far. They don't want to agree for a ceasefire, and they want to raid Rafah. They dropped leaflets, and we don't know what to do or where to go.
The eastern flank of the city, bordering the Green Line and marked for evacuation, bears the brand of the assault. Zionist forces rained down heavy artillery and air bombardment, particularly targeting neighborhoods like Al-Janina, Al-Tanur, Al-Salam, and Al-Shawka. The tall mounds with each passing moment, as families mourn their fallen, tend to the wounded, and search desperately for the missing. Meanwhile, Israeli occupation vehicles patrol the separating border fence, while reconnaissance aircrafts fill the skies. Amidst this turmoil, a closure of the Rafah border crossing looms, threatening dire humanitarian consequences for Gaza's already besieged population. Head of the UN Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in occupied Palestinian territories issued a stark warning about the potential fallout.
Over 75% of the population in Gaza so far has been displaced, as you know. And the population left inside might now have no option but to remain in a ever-decreasing area of land. We always remind the parties that all civilians should be able to flee the areas to seek safety.
In the face of such relentless violence, Palestinians confront a distorted future, where each day brings fresh horrors of loss, destruction, and siege. The occupation, relentless in its pursuit of domination, forces families to endure unimaginable suffering time and again, effectively signing humanity's death warrant.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that an Israeli ground invasion of the southern Rafah town or the southern Gaza town of Rafah would be intolerable because of its devastating humanitarian consequences. Antonio Guterres warned the occupation that an assault on Rafah is a strategic mistake.
Decisive moment for the Palestinians. Even the best friends of Israel are clear. An assault on Rafah would be a strategic mistake, a political calamity, and a humanitarian nightmare. I appeal to all those with influence over Israel to do everything in their power to help avert even more tragedy.
Algeria strongly condemned the Israeli occupation forces settlement for the implementation of military operations in the city of Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip in preparation for a ground invasion.
Algeria condemns in the strongest terms the Israeli occupation forces' military operations in the city of Rafah, south of the Gaza Strip, in preparation for a ground invasion of this Palestinian area. This extremely dangerous escalation, which threatens to cause an unprecedented criminal toll and a humanitarian catastrophe of wide scope and dimensions, comes to confirm that the Israeli settlement occupation is continuing to implement its plans to annihilate the Palestinian people and displace the rest of them.
The Algerian Foreign Ministry indicated in this context that the occupation, by doing so, confirms that it doesn't care at all about the international community's consensus on the necessity of accelerating the implementation of an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip.
In doing so, the occupation confirms that it does not care at all about the consensus of the international community on the necessity of accelerating the implementation of an immediate and permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, and on the inevitability of launching a political process that guarantees the establishment of an independent and sovereign Palestinian state as a just, permanent, and final solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
Algeria has issued a call to the international community urging immediate and decisive action to halt the ongoing aggression by the occupation against the Palestinians.
Algeria insists that the international community must promptly, resolutely, and decisively intervene to exert pressure on the occupying power, ensuring it is deprived of the means and resources to perpetuate its coercion, tyranny, and intimidation of innocent Palestinians for over 7 months. Additionally, Algeria underscores the grave consequences of the ongoing Israeli aggression against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, the potential escalation of the highest levels, including a ground military invasion of the Palestinian city of Rafah, is cautioned to have profoundly serious ramifications. These repercussions, Algeria warns, could significantly shape the future of peace and security in the entire region for decades to come.
A spokesperson for the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, Jens Lake, said that Israel has closed the Rafah and Karam Abu Salim crossings as part of its military operation in Rafah. The UN official emphasized in a press conference in Geneva that the prolonged fuel entry ban into Gaza would cripple the humanitarian relief operation in the region, noting that the two main crossings for aid into Gaza remain closed and that UN agencies have very limited stocks inside the territory. Furthermore, Hamas stated that its political bureau chief Ismail Haniyeh has been in contact with the Secretary General of the Islamic Jihad movement, Ziyad al-Nakhala, discussing the resistance decision to approve a proposed ceasefire agreement received from mediators 2 days ago, in addition to the details of the proposed agreement. Hamas in a statement affirmed that both sides reviewed the necessary measures to ensure the implementation of the agreement and reiterated that the resistance factions will not back down from their demands outlined in the proposed agreement they have agreed upon, including ceasefire, comprehensive withdrawal, supervised exchange, reconstruction, and lifting the blockade. The head of the Palestinian Islamic Resistance Movement, Osama Hamdan, stated that the group's acceptance of the proposed truce in Gaza came after extensive negotiations where numerous proposals were considered but didn't align with the resistance conditions and Palestinian people's demands. Speaking at a press conference in Beirut, the Hamas leader highlighted that the agreement addresses key Palestinian concerns, including halting aggression, complete withdrawal of occupation forces from Gaza, and return of displaced individuals. Emphasizing the agreement's coherence across its 3 stages, Hamdan noted it effectively blocks any attempts by the occupation to release prisoners and then resume aggression. Osama Hamdan also warned on Tuesday that if the Zionist military aggression continues in Rafah, there will be no ceasefire deal.
If the aggression continues, there will be no ceasefire because Israelis are the ones attacking and shooting. It is normal for the resistance to respond to this aggression, to respond in defense, and to respond in order to defeat the occupation.
Osama Hamdan stressed in this context that the behavior of the occupation government after announcing the movement's approval of the proposal reflects Netanyahu's insistence on obstructing all the mediators' efforts, stressing that storming Rafah crossing is a crime and an escalation against a civilian facility protected by international law. Let's take a listen.
We affirm that the ball is first in Netanyahu's court and the extremist members of his government, and that their behavior after announcing the movement's approval reflect an insistence of this criminal to obstruct all of the efforts of the mediators, including the American administration.
Hamas's positive response to the ceasefire proposal showcased its adept handling of negotiations amidst repeated attempts by the Israeli government to levy false accusations of hindrance against Palestinian resistance. This strategic timing applied pressure on the occupation government amid its internal crises. Marwa Bilaiwan.
The Zionist entity's willingness to engage in negotiations with the Hamas movement stems from its failure to achieve its set objectives through military means. Despite its efforts, Israel has not decisively defeated resistance forces, liberated prisoners, secured complete military control over Gaza, or displaced its inhabitants beyond its borders. These disappointments have compelled Israel to go to the negotiations table with Hamas. The fact that Hamas has agreed to the latest ceasefire proposal demonstrates the wisdom and restraint of the Palestinian resistance, as evidenced by the timing of their acceptance.
The resistance opted for a compromise and timed its announcement appropriately. This indeed caught the Israeli side off guard. We're well aware of Netanyahu and his government vehemently oppose any agreement, primarily because of them. Any such accord entails concessions and upheaval. This would significantly undermine Israeli policy, resulting in a decline in their position.
The Palestinian side's agreement to the ceasefire proposal at this point defied Netanyahu's expectations. He had repeatedly sought to portray Hamas as unwilling to negotiate, but this strategy backfired when faced with the reality of Palestinian acceptance. This occurred notably in front of families of prisoners held by the Palestinian resistance. Following Hamas's response, these families promptly threatened further escalation if the Israeli government rejected the ceasefire.
Despite the international pressures to halt the war, Netanyahu continues to succumb the pressure and blackmail from figures like Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. This internal government discord aims to prevent them from maintaining control over the government's continuity. Additionally, the division within the War Council is exacerbating the situation. Israeli military and security forces also maintain the stance that a military solution is unlikely to succeed or result in the recovery of prisoners.
The positive response from the Palestinians came at a crucial time, causing disruption within Netanyahu's government and intensifying pressure both domestically and internationally on the occupation authority. Washington, along with its partners, views Hamas' acceptance of the agreement as the most favorable outcome for both the prisoners and the Palestinian population. This situation exacerbates divisions and contradictions between Israel and its historic and unconditional ally, the US. It underscores the strengths of the Palestinian resistance in military, political, and negotiating realms, while also exposing divisions among Israeli politicians and their dispersion.
In other developments, President Abdelmajid Tebboune chaired the Algerian Council of Ministers, which approved substantial hikes in retirement benefits and pensions ranging between 10 to 15%. President Tebboune emphasized that the decision reflects the government's acknowledgement and gratitude for the contributions of workers. These salary increases aim to enhance the quality of life for retirees and their families across various demographics. Additionally, the Council approved draft for fundamental laws and compensatory systems concerning medical and paramedical professionals. President Tebboune instructed the Health Minister to continue drafting the necessary legal frameworks in this regard. And more international news with Nabil Khazini.
In a big ceremony in Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin was sworn in as President of Russia for a historic fifth term on Tuesday. The Russian president stressed during the inauguration ceremony in the Kremlin that his country's top priorities are to ensure sustainable population growth, preserve the country's civilizational traditions, and continue development in partnership with the countries of the global majority. International Atomic Energy Agency Chief Rafael Grossi said Iran and the UN nuclear watchdog will continue talks aimed at ending an impasse on many issues between them and should strike soon a deal on a package of measures. Grossi flew to Iran on Monday, hoping to bolster oversight by International Atomic Energy Agency of Tehran's atomic activities after various setbacks. China's President Xi Jinping arrived in Belgrade, Serbia, on Tuesday for an official two-day state visit. After France, Belgrade is the second stop on Xi's first visit to Europe in 5 years, which also includes Hungary. The Chinese president is expected to discuss China's multi-billion investment in Serbia and possible new deals. Rescue efforts in southern Brazil are still underway to evacuate people from raging floods and mudslides in what has become the region's largest ever climate catastrophe, with at least 90 dead and 115,000 forced to leave their homes. Entire cities were underwater, with thousands of people cut off from the world by the flood water brought by days of torrential rains.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for tonight's program. Thank you for tuning in and have a good night.